Yeah, basically, I changed my topic slightly. I thought it's good to take a step back and not directly jump into this like token craziness that's going on. But I'm happy to answer a few questions at the end if you want. So what I want to do is tell you a bit more about why we believe that blockchain is actually quite a big game changer to the way how society, how business, how the economy works these days. Who believes that they know why this is such a big thing? Anybody thinking? Okay, cool. So who is like a bit familiar with blockchain already? Okay, cool. I think it's a nice kind of philosophical way of abstracting things that I'm going to talk about. So yeah, but you see in a moment. So let's maybe start with a kind of definition what a game changer really is. So maybe it's good to refer to some right thinker like Buckminster Fuller, who once said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And what I'm trying to convince you is that blockchain does indeed exactly that. So it's a new model, a new way of doing things that will fundamentally change the system. So what is the system? To give you an idea, I picked a few institutions that form the system as it is right now. So it's really the grease of our economy. So I mean, maybe not the first one, it's the Monte Carlo casino, but there are other ones. Who knows what these institutions are? Anybody, any idea? So I'm using it in a very loose sense. The second one is the PayPal headquarters. You have the UK Land Registry. There's the New York Stock Exchange, and like a former institution that went down. It's Lehman's headquarters. So this is like what the way how we've so far kind of organized society. So we have these trusted institutions that sit in the middle and facilitate transactions the way how we do dealings with each other. Now, let's maybe try to do a bit of scientific investigation, do a bit of modeling to abstract things. What do they share, like to get a bit of a better idea what the model really is at the moment. So if you go, if you think a bit about what they actually do, I would argue there are like 3 different services or operational services that they all offer and have in common. So the first thing is checking the authenticity of incoming messages by customers, clients. That's what the sealed letter stands for. The second thing is they all do some sort of bookkeeping, record keeping. They keep track of who owns what and whatnot. And then the third thing, they all do some sort of reckoning up. It's what the abacus stands for. So they process, they like transfer land titles from one person to another. Sometimes they merge them. That's sort of what they all in one or the other way have in common. Now, yeah, this is sort of the model, like adding a few arrows, applying our engineering backgrounds to turn it into a systems diagram, a very simple one, admittedly. So yeah, we end up with this very simple, simplistic model of an institution. Now, it's true, that's what they all do, but there's something more sort of elusive, what they also all have in common. And it is that they all manage in one way or another contention between the customers and clients that interact with these institutions. So because they all manage in one way or another a scarce resource, this is what they all do. Like they keep track that not like I can just claim I have now $1 million on my bank account or whatever. In the end, it's the institution which says or which manages the contention between the parties. Now, the way how we've done this so far is basically by brute force giving them authority. This is what little Cartman stands for. They decide and are the effective eventual authority about the entries in this ledger. Now, okay, by extension, we get sort of this these four pieces to our model. And the old model in total basically are all sorts of institutions interacting with each other. They all mutually also don't trust each other. Maybe we should add another layer later on, like sort of a meta institution, like think of clearing houses that then manage the distrust between the institutions. There's like obviously also oversight, regulators. I mean, the system is more complex, but like this is the very core of how society at the moment actually works. Now, what meanwhile happened in the, I mean, institutions are an old thing, but what meanwhile happened in the last 50, 60 years or so is digitisation. So the ledger turned into databases, symbolized by the hard drive. The abacus turned into silicon, and the authentication of messages turned into encryption. This is an elliptic curve, like a mathematical tool for doing encryption and cryptographic signatures. So, like 50, 60 years ago, we had these human computers that did all the reckoning, all the message checking, reckoning up, the updating of the bookkeeping. And these days we have computers, obviously a bit more modern, but this is what has happened. Now, what hasn't happened is the digitization of the fourth thing, like the digitization of trust. Effectively, what we now have these days is like a system of disparate computer systems, but still there are authorities behind that that in the end decide who owns what. They are the regulators, but it's become all very intransparent. It's even worse in some ways because it's also automated. Nobody can really keep track of what's going on, and it's partly what leads to big crises in the economy. Nonetheless, like what we have at the moment are these walled gardens instead of like a digital commons that we can all use as common infrastructure. Now, I would argue that basically what blockchain brings us is exactly this system of digitizing trust, of digitizing this really, really scarce resource that we all need in order to interact with each other. And this is just like a little bit of an artist impression, what this could look like. So out of several systems, you make a single one where authority is automatically baked into the protocol, baked into the software, and enforces the rules by which the system and the interaction between all the users should run. So yeah, blockchain solves the issue of multi-party contention without having to involve a human. Trust is no longer needed to interact with a third party. This is the first time ever we have such an instance of a technology which can do such a thing. And practically speaking, we have just commoditized the rarest and most delicate of all intangible assets, which is trust. And I think in the future, trusting an institution will be as archaic as a concept to future generations as using an abacus for reckoning up. Any questions?
Do you have any questions? Just raise a hand, please. You get thrown.
So I'm happy to also speak about like what this has to do with the tokens that are currently being readily sold.
Yeah. Hi. My question is, what do you think? How long does it take that blockchain will take place on a regularly, daily, so that the majority of people are using the technology, so like smartphones or internet and.
I mean, people are working really hard on doing this. Like, I mean, the first systems we've seen, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, I mean, although people wanted to do mobile applications really, really early on, we're getting there slowly. I mean, I could see this getting larger scale adoption over the next few years. I mean, there are some things that all these systems don't provide yet. Issues like scalability, certain levels of privacy, permissioning, but there are projects like the Polkadot project that we are working on, for example, that will address such things, but this will be key and probably you need a few more years to be developed, but then I think we're getting there.
Do you have a number? So.
3-5 years?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi. What is Parity and what is Polkadot?
Right. So Parity is a normal company, I mean, not like a UK registered company, where we develop blockchain technology, fundamental infrastructure layer technology. And also apply this for certain use cases. So one thing we did actually, I mean, in terms of large-scale adoption, we worked, for example, with the World Food Programme to use a blockchain-like system to deploy the distribution of benefits in Syrian refugee camps. And it's a system used by 20,000 people at the moment in Jordan, where instead of like a system operated by a single payment processor, this is like a shared infrastructure that can be used by all sorts of people and runs independent of us in the background, just between all the servers there. Polkadot is a project to connect different blockchains, and it addresses one key issue that I just mentioned, the scalability of all the systems. I mean, when you read about Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these systems are currently limited to about 12, 15 transactions per second, which isn't very much. I mean, Visa, I think, in like intense times processes 30,000 per second. So a system that connects different blockchains could be a way of scaling the limitation out of the of individually limited systems.
Thanks.
Next question about the tokens and the currencies. I just became aware that there are hundreds of currencies, cryptocurrencies. So what's the thing with that? And is it that anybody can just start their own currency?
Yeah, I mean, indeed, anybody can just start their own currency without. I mean, you need to do a few things, but you can use Ethereum basically to deploy a new token if you find enough people that are convinced that this is a useful token currency, like you've established a new currency without the need of finding this institution that manages the bookkeeping and all these 4 services that I just mentioned. Yeah, I mean, I mean, there are a few which will probably become very useful. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot that people are experimenting. But it's exactly what I said. I mean, it's this first. I mean, this like proliferation of tokens is like the first instance where we see that blockchain is actually a big game changer to systems that involve trust. In this case, it's currencies or payment systems, which can now be like deployed in an instance, like in a second.
Maybe a last question?
Hi, I'm just wondering, have you had much experience in speaking with regulators, and has it been difficult to get them over the line in understanding and like feeling safe with the concept?
It depends. I mean, like there are lots of smart people within regulatory agencies. I mean, I think many of them. I mean, regulators are made to keep the system as it is, right? That's the fundamental problem when you work with regulators. They are not institutions that or agencies that are supposed to change things. So I think they'll need a lot of time to adjust to what's currently happening. But I mean, the interesting thing, what we are currently seeing is that these systems actually lead to a lot of regulatory competition. There are jurisdictions which are very much forward-thinking, like Switzerland or Hong Kong, Singapore, where some things work much more easily than, for example, in the US or UK. Although even the US is moving now. There are some states which have adopted very lenient approaches to cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Me personally, yeah, I have a token. Say again? Well, as a company, we don't. I mean, like the sort of the concept of having your own currency doesn't fully make sense, because I mean, you want in the end like a large set of stakeholders, a network effect and adoption. Like you don't want to be the owner of a currency, right? I mean, there is a system that we're working on, like Polkadot, that will come with a token, and many people hopefully will use it. But the idea is not that like we are the owner of that currency. It's for Polkadot, it's very similar to Ethereum. It's like a token that incentivizes the maintenance of the network. So yeah, facilitating the transaction and the updating by miners. I mean, if you know what miners are. Say again? Oh, my personal token? Nothing. That's why nobody uses it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it can enforce as long as everything is digital. Like as long as it's digital, like it will be automatically enforced. But of course, where digital and physical meet, you need either agencies or what people call oracles, if it's the other way around, if you want to get information from the real world into the blockchain, like you still rely on that. Like on the fringes, on the endpoints, you need agencies, but they can rely on this single source of truth that we didn't have before. And also, I mean, one interesting thing, I mean, these systems as they are right now, people call them unpermissioned, so basically everybody could deploy any sort of currency, token, system, whatever. I mean, as I did, I just deployed a token. But if you improve these systems and also bake in sort of rules for what sort of systems, what sort of applications can be deployed on top, then you get a much more powerful system that regulators might be interested in using, which at the same time also might pose one of the biggest challenges or like problems with the technology. I mean, in some ways it could be a very, very authoritarian technology as well. I mean, it gives a lot of freedom, but if it's misused by the authorities that we have right now and everybody's forced into a very, very strictly regulated blockchain, so to speak, then things could also become very, very bad, I think.
Thank you very much, Jutta Steiner. Thank you very much for your speech.